What's up everybody, Griffey here. The bright green splat of a low Tomatometer rating hasn't stopped these movies from being awesome, so get out your watch list.
All you people are so scared of me. Most days I take that as a compliment.
2000's Pitch Black is an impressive sci-fi horror flick that gave the world Richard B. Riddick, one of Vin Diesel's first major roles. As Riddick, a notorious criminal with sci-fi supervision, he's a charismatic anti-hero whose physical prowess is matched only by his ironclad determination.
Is he really that dangerous?
Only around humans.
Pitch Black turned a profit, Vin Diesel wowed audiences, and thus a sequel was born, 2004's The Chronicles of Riddick. Chronicles' budget was 5 times that of Pitch Black, ultimately landing at $105 million. But it backfired. Critics savaged the film, but we feel it's simply misunderstood. Unlike Pitch Black, the focus here is entirely on Riddick, and the world of the movie leans more into science fiction than horror.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
It's sweeping, strange, and hella fun if you take it on its own merits. And a fun bonus fact, while making Chronicles of Riddick, Diesel taught Dame Judi Dench to play Dungeons and Dragons. In the case of Kung Pao Enter the Fist, the reviews are terrible, and it's not hard to see why. But quality of awesomeness is not limited to films of awesome quality. Kung Pao might not be good, but it sure as hell is awesome.
I must apologize for Wimp Lo. He is an idiot. We have purposely trained him wrong, as a joke.
Steve Odekirk wrote, directed, and stars in this comedy, which mixes footage from the 1976 Hong Kong action movie Tiger and Crane Fist with original material. Together they tell the ridiculous story of the Chosen One and his search for the man who killed his family, known only as Master Payne, aka Betty. Sounds great, right? There's more.
Yes, a tiny net is a death sentence. It's a net and it's tiny.
The Chosen One fights a CGI cow who's also a karate master. French aliens make a surprise appearance. There are faces where there shouldn't be. There's a Lion King send-up. It's overflowing with love for martial arts movies and unafraid of getting utterly cataclysmically weird. It's odd, it's silly, it's a little bit dumb, and above all, it's awesome. The dismal reception of Godzilla, King of the Monsters isn't a mystery. The film's just not interested in conventional storytelling. If you want to watch nuanced characters struggle with and ultimately transcend life's difficulties, this ain't the movie for you. If, on the other hand, you want to see Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, King Ghidorah, and about 300 other classic kaiju duke it out, you come to the right place. If you are a true Godzilla fan, there is no way you watched Rodan emerge from that volcano, fly over that town and attack those human beings, and were not immediately recognizing you were watching one of the greatest spectacles in the entire history of Godzilla's franchise. I saw that and I was just dribbling it on my face like I was at an old country buffet. I couldn't get enough of that. This is the big budget Godzilla movie you've always wanted.
This is a dangerous path. You are meddling with forces beyond our comprehension, gambling with the lives of billions.
Now, in fairness, the story does fall apart if you look at it for too long, but there are plenty of strong actors working hard to keep it together. Bradley Whitford, Ken Watanabe, Millie Bobby Brown, and Vera Farmiga are all here doing their best.
So her and Godzilla, they got a thing going on? That's kind of messed up, right?
Let's get real. You come to Godzilla for Godzilla, not Godzilla's human friend. And King of the Monsters delivers on that front. It's hard to believe Hocus Pocus got trashed by critics, considering how iconic it is now. But a lot of today's Hocus Pocus stans probably watched it as kids, and there's a reason kids don't get hired as film critics.
Let's barbecue and fillet.
Still, Hocus Pocus fever isn't just a nostalgia bump. It's a genuinely delightful movie. I mean, you put Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy on screen together and you're gonna be entertained. The main reason we think this movie drew the ire of critics is because it was released in July 1993. Bad decision. A family-friendly movie with a loaded cast and gentle spookiness would have cleaned up around Halloween. Instead, it had to compete with Jurassic Park, the original. Do yourselves a favor, save this one for October. Do you know that's the only movie my Nana ever came out of her trailer to take me to in her whole life? And then when my mom found out she took me for my birthday, we didn't talk to her for like 6 months. Because my mom thought she had indoctrinated me into actual witchcraft. And that was the only thing I didn't like about the movie, is I did not gain the powers of a warlock. Tokyo Drift is the ugly duckling of the Fast and the Furious franchise. It's caught somewhere between the series' grounded beginnings and the total insanity of the more recent installments. But who cares? It's entertaining.
There's no wax on, wax off for drifting. Learn by doing it.
Tokyo Drift is a major departure from the first two films. There's no Paul Walker or Vin Diesel in sight until the final shot, and we leave the American muscle car scene behind for the neon-drenched glitz of Tokyo. Tokyo Drift has some of the coolest driving sequences in the entire franchise and also begins to shift into a self-aware tone. It turns out that change has allowed Fast and the Furious to become about something more than the super niche world of underground street racing. It's cool, it's fast, and it's not too hung up on plot. Tokyo Drift aims to impress, and it does. When it comes to film adaptations of video games, Warcraft admittedly lacks in the department of interesting characters, but it still manages to bring the world of Azeroth to life with impressive visuals and sweeping cinematography. Critics, however, were unimpressed.
Find these beasts, or whatever they are.
Director Duncan Jones' talent and appreciation of the source material shows, almost to a fault. In fact, most of the film's shortcomings come where it's too faithful to the games, and if you're not already familiar with Azeroth, you might miss out. On the other hand, if you're in the know, you're going to find tons to enjoy here. So if you don't play Warcraft, you might want to start there. But for Warcraft fans, this is a fine movie that absolutely brims with love for the original game. Phoebe Cates is an icon, but one thing she does not get enough credit for is her comedic acting chops. And there's no better demonstration of said chops than Drop Dead Fred, an oft-forgotten 1991 comedy. Sure, the reviews were terrible.
The very worst film of 1991 is, according to me, Drop Dead Fred.
Okay, really terrible, but hear us out. Drop Dead Fred is about a woman for whom everything has gone wrong. That's Cates. Her marriage falls apart, so she moves back in with her mother, and that's where the magic happens. She's reunited with her imaginary childhood friend, Drop Dead Fred, played by the phenomenal Rick Mayall.
Every child should have one, especially when she grows up.
I just remember watching it all the time and trying to slide under the stalls at public restrooms, because that's what Drop Dead Fred did, and I got in big trouble. Yeah, I did it at an Arby's once and got in big trouble. Fred sets out to fix Elizabeth's relationships. Unfortunately, he's not very good at it. Drop Dead Fred is an extremely dark comedy which threw 90s audiences for a loop. It's no rom-com, it's a biting, surprisingly heartfelt story of adulthood gone wrong. As producer Mike Medavoy put it at the time, it's a children's movie on drugs, and that's what fans love about it. It's tough to match the pedigree of Legend. It's a Ridley Scott-directed dark fantasy starring a fresh-faced Tom Cruise as the Robin Hood-esque Jack, and Tim Curry as the Lord of Darkness. Sure, Legend might be eclipsed by contemporaries like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal, but it's a remarkably well-made film with some serious darkness at its heart.
Who needs this tender morsel?
Legend is a beautiful watch, brimming with elegantly realized worlds, costumes, and creatures. Tim Curry as the Prince of Darkness is one of the all-time coolest costumes in movie history. My favorite version of Satan ever on film. Cruise is polarizing now, but few actors commanded the screen like he did throughout the 1980s. And Mia Sara is wonderful as the impetuous, good-hearted Princess Lily. Why did she go touch that unicorn? There's one rule in this whole utopia, it's don't touch the unicorn, and she can't not do it. Add the intriguingly dark tone and you've got an absolute classic. Whether you're a starry-eyed kid or a savvy adult, Legend is one fairy tale you can believe in. If you were a child of the 80s or 90s as I was, you most certainly loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. It was an earth-shattering weekend at the theaters. Sometimes those movies do not hold up when you return to them. I would argue if you go back and watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the movie now, you will find way more endearing moments than you remember.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat. You're gonna look wild, you right?
Take the action sequences. Sure, they're a bit stiff, but the choreography is genuinely thrilling. And the story is more mature than you might expect. Add to that some good performances like James Saito as Shredder and Sam Rockwell as a street thug, his first role in a major motion picture.
You got any cigarettes? Regular or menthol?
But putting all that good stuff aside, the best reason to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the movie is the impressive Jim Henson designed costumes. Those costumes were so good that you probably got taken by your parents to that trash Ninja Turtles on stage performance where they just had jazzercise guys running around to look like those turtles. That's how good those costumes were, just cads and charlatans everywhere trying to steal our money doing that in front of our faces. Sure, they may lack some of the detail that CGI can offer, but their real-world heft has a charm all its own. Teen horror films prioritize pretty faces and high body counts over skillful execution, often employing questionable logic to get its stars to their bloody ends. And Final Destination might be the most creative of all of the horror movie franchises in how they deploy kills. The first film in the 5-film series, with the 6th on the way in 2025, Final Destination has a killer premise. Once death has chosen you, there's no escape.
September 25, 9:25. Your birthday is the same as your departure time.
A high school student named Alex boards a plane, then foresees the plane exploding, killing everyone on board. After several people exit the plane, including Alex, his premonition comes true. But pretty soon, everyone who got off the plane starts dying, and rather elaborately. Yup, they didn't cheat death, they just delayed it.
You have to figure out how and when it's coming back at you.
Final Destination kills never phone it in. It's not art house horror, but it's impossible to watch and not be entertained. Save Midsommar and The Witch for when you're feeling highbrow, and watch Final Destination with good friends, a few drinks, and permission to scream. For years, the Saw franchise ran like clockwork. A new film every year, complete with intricately designed traps and fiendish plot twists.
I know what you're doing, Doctor.
The first film, 2004 Saw, continues to reign supreme. Saw is the film that put director James Wan and writer Lee Wanell on the map after they met in film school. Saw made over $100 million on a tiny budget of just $1.2 million. It's no wonder that the film spawned so many sequels, despite critics' tepid response. Saw is about a serial killer who traps his victims inside elaborate puzzles in an effort to test their will to live. There are a few great kills and a jaw-dropping twist, all brought to life by the likes of Ken Leung, Danny Glover, Cary Elwes, and of course, Tobin Bell as Jigsaw. It's bloody, disgusting, and twisted, and that's why fans love it. National Treasure showcases Nicolas Cage at his goofy best. Considering how many people have a love-hate relationship with the actor, it shouldn't come as a huge surprise that this film proves so divisive with critics. The film follows Ben, a noted historian and treasure hunter, who sets out to discover a hidden secret at the heart of United States history. It delivers a healthy dose of conspiracy theory as both the Knights Templar and Freemasons have roles to play, while the Declaration of Independence is central to the plot.
A toast, yeah? To high treason. That's what these men were committing when they signed the Declaration.
It's these sillier elements that guaranteed National Treasure a hefty serving of critical disdain. The story's way too outlandish for the serious mind of a film connoisseur. But do we care? No. It's the kind of wacky fun that makes for great escapism. Throw in a stellar cast that includes Diane Kruger, Jon Voight, Sean Bean, and Harvey Keitel, and National Treasure is a great way to spend a couple of hours, especially if you don't want to think too hard about what's actually going on. In fact, we recommend you don't at all. The fact that The Mummy Returns didn't get rave reviews when it came out in 2001 might not shock most people. It was always going to be tough to meet the high expectations set by The Mummy, but that doesn't make its return a bad film. Sure, it has some clunky dialogue, and it's not nearly as memorable as the original installment. And yes, there's some pretty awful CGI that goes into Dwayne Johnson's Scorpion King character. Get past those issues though, and The Mummy Returns is a hell of a lot of fun.
They once again removed the creature from his grave.
I don't mean to point fingers, but isn't it your job to make sure that doesn't happen?
A lot of us saw this in our teenage years and things were happening. The Rock, hot. Brendan Fraser, hot. Rachel Weisz, hot. Everyone was in like cool, sweaty outfits. It was just a hot movie. Add to that the sequel series of exhilarating action sequences, from a bus chase through the streets of London to an attack by cannibal pygmies, and you've got a solid afternoon's entertainment on tap. It's hard work to make a good parody. Take the 1987 comedy Spaceballs. It was the latest in Mel Brooks' series of film genre send-ups, meant to be a spoof of the original Star Wars trilogy and a smattering of other sci-fi series. The film fell short of a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but it still had more good reviews than bad. What it didn't do was inspire audiences at the box office. It barely made back its budget, earning just $38 million. But time has been good to Spaceballs. It's now a cult classic and is even arguably Mel Brooks' most popular release. The film is packed with excellent sight gags, hilarious quotes, and some warm-hearted chemistry between Bill Pullman and John Candy.
I can't breathe in this thing!
Meanwhile, Rick Moranis delivers one of the best performances of his career as the not exactly dastardly Dark Helmet. Yeah, I still to this day say ludicrous speed every time I try to go past someone on the freeway, much to my wife's chagrin. It is not a turn on to quote Spaceballs in front of possible love partners. The first Sister Act won widespread praise from critics and was a box office hit, making a sequel a foregone conclusion. But when Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit arrived a year later with much of the same cast, the box office was meh, and the reviews were universally negative. Perhaps the major problem with Sister Act 2 is that it pretty much abandons everything that made the first film a hit. In the original, Whoopi Goldberg's sister Mary Clarence goes into witness protection to avoid a violent mob boss. Just the idea is funny. But in the sequel, Whoopi's back to help stop a school from shutting down by winning a singing contest. Yeah.
Oh, remember, nothing is ever as bad as it seems at first.
But while critics didn't embrace the film's shift to focus on the school kids rather than Goldberg, the movie's full of fresh energy. There are a number of great musical performances, and although the plot is actually completely run-of-the-mill, it's a decent vehicle for the songs and the cast's comedic talent. Yes, there are laughs, and some excellent music, and cute kids. That's a recipe for a pleasant few hours with no nasty surprises. There are very few films that successfully blend live action and animation. Think Mary Poppins, think Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Space Jam. That's right, Space Jam works, even if the critics didn't exactly see it that way when it hit screens back in 1996. But the idea is golden. Michael Jordan and the cast of the Looney Tunes are on a mission to save the Tunes from being enslaved by defeating an alien team at basketball.
You, all of you, are now our prisoners.
The idea of watching this movie, and the fact that it played almost to our young minds as a historical document of what actually happened when Michael Jordan left the NBA, was mind-blowing. No, it was not the gambling. It was intergalactic slavery, and he won. Jordan might not be a brilliant actor, but his energy and general likability give the movie a lighthearted feel that makes it a good choice for the whole family. Who wouldn't like to see all their favorite cartoon icons come to life in the real world? That's why Space Jam has been a fan favorite for decades, and now pretty much qualifies as a cult hit. Plus, cameos from the likes of Bill Murray make this movie a delight, and who doesn't want to be delighted? There are hundreds of movies set in medieval times, but few that are actually good. Of course, there are older classics like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but it's difficult to think of a recent option that's not a fantasy film.
Bless this thy hand grenade, that with it thou mayst blow thine enemies to tiny bits in thy mercy.
But if knights in armor and ladies in cone hats are your thing, we've got you. Released in 2001, Brian Helgeland's A Knight's Tale stars Heath Ledger as a peasant squire who seizes an opportunity to compete as a knight in a series of jousting tournaments. Along with his friends Roland and Watt, played by Mark Addy and Alan Tudyk, he impersonates a noble in an effort to win the championship.
Well, I am Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein from Gelderland, and these here are my faithful squires.
At its heart, A Knight's Tale follows the Rocky formula. Lowly underdog rises to take on the world, win the girl, and achieve the fame and fortune he deserves. So it's understandable why some critics might not have loved it when it was first released. And the movie's a bit odd, but we think in a good way. The modern day soundtrack might put some people off at first, but aren't dulcimers and minuets the obvious snooze-worthy choice? We think the song choices perfectly complement the on-screen action. What's more metal than jousting? The script is funny and the actors are funny in it, constantly stealing the show. And it is wonderful to go back and spend time with an in his prime Heath Ledger. On guard! Film comedies often have a rough go with critics. Even some of the best and funniest don't move their needle, despite being hugely popular with audiences. Consider Step Brothers. It missed out on a fresh rating even though it's widely considered to be one of the best comedies of the last 2 decades. Maybe critics thought the antics of Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly's characters were too lowbrow or mean-spirited. But we're here to say there's a place for that, when it's done right. Forget the reviews. Step Brothers is fondly remembered by most people who've seen it. Coming quickly on the heels of Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, the film features much of the same cast and crew and has the same sort of chaotic energy. Plus, it is endlessly quotable.
Did we just become best friends? Yup!
Not a week goes by that I don't claim that my wife has locked me in a prison on the planet bullshit, or that I have a belly full of white dog turds and should be left alone. Perhaps the best part about Step Brothers, though, is that it isn't trying to be something it's not. The ridiculous family-based feuds aren't trying to preach to viewers. They're just there to make people laugh. And that's something this 2008 movie still manages to do remarkably frequently. Empire Records is an insanely quotable 1995 coming-of-age comedy. This was the era of Clerks. This was the era of indie movies that you felt like you could make. People talking about things that I would talk about, even though it was clearly written by older people that didn't understand us. It's both a throwback to similar films from the previous decade and an attempt to channel the indie music-loving children of the 1990s. Teen comedies are hit or miss with critics, and Empire Records mostly miss. But as the audience score shows, it landed with its target viewers.
You know what, Joe? One of these days, I'm gonna show you little people.
The story isn't terribly original. A group of weirdos who work in a record store fight to stop a takeover by a major chain. They're plucky underdogs, they learn about each other, and they argue over who has the best music taste. It's exactly what you'd expect, but in a very good way, thanks to a spectacular cast, including Liv Tyler, Renee Zellweger, Robin Tunney, Anthony LaPaglia, and Rory Cochrane.
Welcome to Music Town. May I service you?
The story goes that Michael Nathanson, president of Regency Pictures, greenlit this film the day before he heard the pitch for Clueless, which he turned down since he already had a teen movie in Empire Records. Regrets? He has a few. Yes, Clueless became a massive hit and part of the cultural zeitgeist, and Empire Records, well, bombed. But in the end, Nathanson turned out an era-defining cult classic. So there you go, Rotten Tomatoes be damned. Go check out some of these movies that are definitely better than they're getting credit for.